As Mr. Oki introduced, I've had an opportunity to study all of 5 subjects in Kumon Studies because my future goal kept changing over 3 years. So today I would like to focus on these 3 languages, English, French, and German. First of all, as you already know, we study English materials by reading stories in Kumon English Studies. That means that if you complete studying from the G material to the O material, you have read more than 45 stories. While I was studying English materials, I enjoyed reading the stories, and I still remember most of them. These are my favorite stories, and as you can see, a lot of them are masterpieces from famous writers. However, I think most of us have the same question at some point, which is reading these stories really going to be useful? I would say yes as an answer, but it might depend on how you encounter each stories. I know that sometimes there are topics that you are not interested in, or sometimes it's too complicated. Of course, I had one too. I still remember one story which I felt, oh, this story won't be for me. Just reading the title, which was Fermat's Last Theorem. This book is about one of the hardest math riddles in history. It explains how Pierre de Fermat wrote down a problem in 1637 that took over 350 years and many smart people to figure out. But unexpectedly, it gave me a curiosity to know more about Fermat's Last Theorem as I read the whole book in Japanese after that. So what I want to say here is that you never know that you can gain from the story until you actually start reading. Also, everyone has different curiosities from various perspectives. So let's read stories with a bit of expectation and excitement. Briefly, what could I learn from Kumon English materials? You might have had an experience when you read about something in a class at school. You realize that I learned this vocabulary in Kumon Studies, or I know this story. I believe that at that moment, your knowledge of vocabulary and grammar is planted in your head. Also, I realized how effective it is to read out loud in order to understand the content well. Lastly, I would like to talk about what I've learned from Kumon Studies briefly. There are many skills that I could gain through it, but I want to focus on the final one today, which is the importance of trial and error. There were several times when I got depressed by Kumon Studies. For example, repeating the same material more than 3 times, and yet I couldn't understand, and I'd made so many mistakes each time. Most of the time in the class was kept up by correcting the errors. I was irritated by the fact that I couldn't learn that much from the material, and I thought that time I spent studying went in vain. However, when I ended my Kumon Studies at KLAS last year, I realized that Kumon materials paved the way for me to figure out my own learning style. In my case, learning French and German with Kumon materials helped me find out that I prefer learning new vocabulary by reading a story rather than memorizing vocabulary itself. Also, I could finally understand how studying grammar is essential and can be the basics in order to learn new languages. Last but not least, actually learning French and German in English was easier for me than learning in Japanese. Coming to realize these things really helped me now preparing for my future career. I can say that I realized what some suitable methods are for me to study, thanks to the experience I had in Kumon Studies. So for those of you who are doing Kumon materials or considering continuing next year, let's have a little bit of excitement to find something new through them. Since you're already here, why don't we try to absorb and master as much as you can through the Kumon method? I hope this presentation helped you to enjoy your life more in KLAS with Kumon Studies. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Anna. Let's move on to the next completer, Nanaka Usami. She is the only student who have completed Kumon Japanese final material in these several years.
So today I'm going to talk about Kumon Japanese materials. As an introduction, Mr. Aoki already mentioned before, but I finished the Kumon final materials in Japanese and I'm doing the completers course now. My recent favorites are The House of the Dead by Dostoevsky. Yes. And I have no idea for the pronunciation, but John and Definitions by Allen. Especially definitions, it introduces definitions of certain words such as friendship, wisdom, and respect by various historical figures. It was really interesting to read those different perspectives, and I'm sure AP students will love it. The next topic is what I got through my studies, through Kumon studies. By reading a vast range of authors and eras, you get used to reading. With this skill, when you try to read about a completely unfamiliar field, you can grasp the general idea. Maybe not 100%, but enough to get it. For example, the M and O materials each have readings about brain science. And the titles are Dialogue, the Brain and Life, and the Brain and Imagination. When I first saw these titles, I thought it was going to be a big challenge, and it was. But even though I have no idea about brain science, I could get some ideas from them. It's because I became better at predicting the author's implied meanings from the context and picking up the key points instantly. And next, the next topic is why I'm struggling with Kumon studies. The text become more and more difficult as it moves through the learning materials. And some of you might dislike classical Japanese and Chinese materials. Unfortunately, there are many of them. However, these are not my biggest problem. The thing is maintaining my motivation. It's so difficult. For this problem, I try to think in terms of overcoming myself, not comparing myself to others. It's difficult. It's still difficult though. There's no need to put yourself down just because other person is doing many worksheets a week. In my case, I praise myself for doing even just one worksheet. That's one small step for you, one giant leap for me. And lastly, I'm going to talk about the advantages of doing Japanese materials. You will get in the habit of reading difficult Japanese, especially the AAP students. It depends on your elective courses, but you only have 2 subjects in Japanese. Also, it's good to have reading comprehension and vocabulary. And lastly, understand the humor. Personally, I believe that knowledge and culture are essential to enjoy entertainment. Most entertainment contains some kind of jokes which demands some sort of knowledge to understand. Acquiring a broad education means not only becoming wiser, but also understanding the humor of the world, even black humor too. If you want to be a witty person, it is a great choice to the Japanese materials, I think. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Nanaka. Then the last completer, Mizuki Arai. She has completed the Kumon English final material and completer's course material. But she is now very close to complete Kumon math final material. Maybe less than 20 worksheets or less.
Okay, I know some of you feel tired, but the essential subject is still that it's mathematics. Whether you're unsure about taking math or you already love it, I'm going to introduce to you what I feel through math Kumon studies. I have taken these classes so far, and Kumon studies are really useful for this because my calculation skill definitely developed doing it again and again. I can calculate more correctly and speedily than before. And it's getting comfortable with numbers. When I see the complicated equation, I think I will give it a try anyway. And I can learn a lot of question patterns and techniques from basic to advanced questions. It can be applied to not only mathematics, but also physics and chemistry. Kumon has helped me that I struggle with the basic calculation anymore. Also, there are fun facts that I felt three main senses. A sense of understanding. I'm enjoyed to fill up a blank page with my own logic. Sense of mental equality. It feels incredibly satisfying to push through long calculations and finally reach a clean answer. And a sense of accomplishment. It was relief to find out that I was solving university entrance exam questions. Even though there are advantages, I often heard or say, "Come on, yabai," like that. Now I will introduce some tips to continue math material. The further ahead you can go yourself, the better. But around level N, it becomes harder to understand everything using only the worksheets. So I recently been matching my worksheets with what I learned in class, focusing on the topics rather than the page numbers. And I wanted to finish the final material before I graduate. So I built this one. But as you might expect, it's just my ear. So I got 3 small habits to help my work. 1. I intentionally stop in the middle of a task. The curiosity about the solution pulls me back into work. And 2nd, before I start doing relaxation, I set up my favorite materials and pens on my desk. By lowering the initial friction, it becomes much easier to transition from fun back to my studies. And last one is give up. I have experienced that I get a lot of sticky notes or I fail the test 3 times and I sometimes meet some difficult questions I don't completely understand using 2 or 3 days. At times like that, I give up. Skip that question. Take a time and start solving them whatever I feel like. So whether you love it or hate it, keeping a good balance is my key to continue something. And then I suddenly realized all those small steps had turned into something true valuable. Find your own comfortable distance and keep moving forward. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mizuki. Now, after the the presentations of these brilliant students, some of you might feel, oh, these students were excellent originally, and that's why they were able to complete the final material. I cannot do the same thing, but I believe it's wrong. They completed the final materials not because they were excellent at first. Instead, they became excellent because they completed. I believe you also can achieve the same thing and become as excellent as they are. I hope that you too will aim for a higher material for building better future of your own. Thank you.